What's up, everybody? ASR Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down 2 characters to solo carry on every single role. If you need to pick a character that is not only good in this meta, but has everything that you need to solo carry games, I'm going to be breaking down those characters role by role, and I'm going to be telling you targeted tips that you can incorporate to play a really solo carry oriented type of play style so that you can pop off and carry in those games where your teammates just aren't cutting it. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality in-depth guides, advanced tips and tricks, and VOD reviews over every single character in the entire game. So if you have a specific main you want to get godly at, then go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, kicking it off with the first role that we wanted to talk about in this video, and it's none other than the DPS. Now, the first DPS that I really want to talk about is probably the best DPS right now in the entire meta, and that's true because he has the most pick rate across all ranks, and it's McCree. Now, the McCree playstyle to play with your team is honestly pretty easy when you have a decent team. You got a shield, you got good healers, you play with your team, you play behind your line, you dish out pressure, you stop divers, and that can be a very effective way to play McCree to pop off and carry your games. You're just gonna output a ton of value. If you hit a certain amount of shots, a certain amount of criticals, you could get expressed value on the table where you can carry a fight early, or you could just do your job and zone away enemy DPS, keep your support alive, protect your tank, dish out damage on the front line, and that's all you need to do when you have a good team. But you're not always going to have a good team, and there are many ways to play McCree that is much more aggressive and proactive, and you can carry as a result, but there is a certain amount of risk, so you don't want to whip it out every single time. Now, that being said, the best way, in my personal opinion, to carry as McCree, and it's what I like to call the McCree lurk, and this is when you really position yourself around natural cover to try to get the drop on enemies. You're sneaking around, you're taking an off angle, and what you're trying to do is get a first shot on the enemy that is a headshot when they do not know your position is there. You could easily play an off angle that's near cover, for example, find an enemy that is not paying attention to you, like an Ana that's in the back line healing her team, scoped in. You hit a headshot, she notices you, you hit a body shot on her before she has any time to react, you finish that Ana off, and then you dip behind natural cover. And the thing is, you got this kill without using your flashbang, so if enemies want to chase you, you could punish them again on top of that with your flashbang, and maybe get 2 kills for your trouble, or just get that 1 kill, get a freaking drive-by, and dip right out of there, and enemies are like, what the hell just happened? Stop the McCree, and it's just too late. And this is a really powerful way to carry games that just feel like nothing happens. Like if you just play a passive role, eventually you're just gonna lose the team fight. But if you're a little bit proactive and you start turning that snowball on your team's favor or for your team's favor, that could be a way that you carry. But moving on to the next DPS that I wanted to talk about, the second DPS is actually Tracer. Now, everyone knows that Tracer is an extremely powerful character at high rank. She is hyper proficient at taking duels. She can put pressure on targets that her team puts pressure on at the same time, like diving in with the wrecking ball. But this type of coordination is going to be a little bit difficult depending on the rank that you're in. Now, honestly, Tracer can be somewhat difficult to play at lower ranks if you are very similar in skill to the people around you, because if you go in on a target, sometimes the entire enemy team is just playing passive and you're going to end up having 3 people on you, and unless you can coordinate a certain amount of pressure, you're not going to get anything done. And on top of that, you could distract enemies for like ever, and in your mind, you should have won a team fight. You just distracted 3 enemies, but you're not. Your teammates aren't doing anything. And it's actually really, if you want to carry these games, you're going to have to get picks on Tracer. You're going to have to be able to distract and kill and go back and help your team. There's a lot you have to accomplish on Tracer to really hard carry some of these games. Now, that being said, one of the best strategies, in my personal opinion, to dominate on Tracer is to just simply wait and look at what is going on in the battlefield. Don't try to necessarily coordinate with your teammates, because if you can make that work, that'll be great, but that's not always going to happen. But at least acknowledge what they are doing and when they are trying to go for these plays. Like if you have a wrecking ball, if you just follow along or wait for your opportunity when that wrecking ball goes in, you can use his feed or his engage to execute your own. Because when your wrecking ball goes in, he goes in against 3 people, he gets stunned by McCree, slept, and he just gets murdered. Now you know there's a window of time where those cooldowns won't affect you, and you can be extremely aggressive at one target. That's a way that you can use the pressure that is created to actually make a play. accordingly. Another really important aspect of this is basically you're overwhelming enemies when something happens. Like, you're not going in just randomly, and I see a lot of tracers do this where they just want to be doing something every single second, but a lot of times timing when you're engaging is extremely important. If the enemies are they're all grouped together, they're perfectly fine, they're under no pressure, and you go at one, typically you're not going to be able to kill them, they're going to get peeled, you're going to get zoned away. But imagine someone on your team just use an ultimate. Imagine someone on your team is going in super aggressively, the Ryan is nanoed, he's getting pushed in. Now, the enemy have to use a lot of abilities, a lot of pressure to respond to that, and that is your best opportunity. So you need to make sure that you have abilities for that opportunity, and you're not just constantly wasting them so that you miss these key moments when the enemy is focused on something else, they're weak, they're low on abilities, and they're vulnerable. Now we go to the next role that everyone wanted to talk about, and it's the supporting role. First character I have to talk about when I talk about carrying on supports, and it's Ana. Ana is an amazing character if you really want to carry on support because of how much different types of impact she can have over the course of a game. She can enable teams, she can enable tanks, DPS, she can create, place herself with nade, sleep, enemy ultimates. I mean, the list goes on and on potentially about the impact that an Ana can have. Now, what I want you to do on Ana, if you really want to solo carry a game, and right off the bat, right when you start the game, you quickly realize that even when you're pocketing the hell out of your teammates, they are dying so damn quickly. Like, you can't heal them. Every time you heal them, they take damage again, and they're almost down to critical. And it's freaking insane sometimes the amount of healing output that Ana has to heal, and it just doesn't feel like it's doing anything, right? Well, to a certain extent, it's really not, because if your teammates are just constantly feeding into the enemy, you're not going to be able to out heal them from that process. Now, it kind of depends on what your team composition is. If you have enough raw heals to really just power them through that amount of damage, but there are other ways to actually prevent the flow of damage on Ana. For instance, let's say there is a McCree and a Hanzo on the high ground and you're playing Route 66 and he's just spamming the shield non-stop over and over and over again. Every time you're Ryan, every time your teammates peek out, they're just taking damage after damage after damage. Now imagine you hit a nade on that McCree and on that Hanzo because he's on the high ground, you hit that billboard and you actually nade them both. Now, for a moment of time, those characters have to back up, they have to retreat, they can't play out there anymore because they could potentially die, and now you just stopped the spread or the flow of damage onto your team so they could push up, and no amount of healing would have stopped that damage, but a little bit of you being proactive did. So being able to identify these types of things and understand sometimes there's going to be a lot of situations actually where you just can't heal out of it. There are some characters that could do it a little bit better, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but Ana is not always a character capable of just over-healing past infinite damage, and yeah, that's just something that you need to quickly identify and pivot your playstyle accordingly. Now, the next type of support that I wanted to talk about is a character that actually can basically heal you past tons of spam damage, and it's Bap. Bap is a character that I think is extremely powerful, especially at lower ranks, because he can just overcome all the mistakes that is created by your main tank and keep them alive anyways. Like, a Ryan should have died 5 times over, but you're Baptiste, so you just kept him alive. Now, Baptiste not only just can keep a tank alive that by all rights should be dead, he can do that with immortality field as well, which can be something that can actually shift the entire course of a battle. For instance, imagine a tank is getting spammed very, very low, and you're just healing them back up, back up, back up. At the same time, you're building your ultimate incredibly quickly, and you can pivot with this immortality field. So for a certain moment, you look for that opportunity where your tank is low, your tank is being pushed up upon, but the enemy is extending resources to push into your tank as well. You save him with the immortality field around the corner, you amplification matrix, and now the enemies who are caught in too aggressively out of position all of a sudden have more damage flying at them, and they cannot kill your Rhine. So it really can turn the entire team fight. It's like a bait and switch, and it's something that you can do a lot in these Rhine v Rhine mirrors, which we're seeing a lot right now in the meta. Pretty much regardless of rank, Rhine is seeing a lot of play, and Baptiste could be the perfect enabler for him. Even a bad Rhine can just dominate an enemy Rhine a lot if he has a really good Baptiste on his shoulder, and it's something that you can really start to do to start to carry more and more games in this current landscape. Now, the last role that I really wanted to talk about in this video, last but not least, is the tanks. And the first tank I really wanted to talk about is Zarya, a character that, in my mind, is one of the easiest characters to climb from any rank to Grandmaster, just solo carry by your own merit, because Zarya has all the capabilities to get kills, protect the team, has a very powerful ultimate that can win team fights. So she's the absolute perfect character for this category. Now, that being said, one of the biggest problems with playing Zarya when you're trying to solo carry is building up that energy. It can be extremely frustrating when you don't have a tank that is playing with you and you're trying to get freaking charge so that you can dish out damage. Now, the first thing that you could do is play yourself around natural cover and feign ignorance, which is something that I really like to do on Zarya, where essentially you pretend that you don't understand that you're being fired upon. You feign a certain weakness. You're playing out in the open, you're looking to the side, you're focusing on another target, bullets fly your way, you pop a bubble, you generate that charge, and then you dip behind natural cover so you're not vulnerable, and essentially you're just baiting enemies into getting you charge. And your self bubble is going to be a way that you can reliably get charged, but you got to make sure that you always get a maxed amount for your self bubble. You don't want to just get a tiny bit of damage, because if you're not getting a lot of charge from your team bubble and then you're getting very little from your self bubble, you're just going to end up chargeless for like way too long and you're not going to be able to get anything done. Now, that being said, you can always get charge with your team bubble, and there are two best ways to do it. The first one is to just tell your teammates to peek a little bit. A roadhog, whatever he is, even a damage dealer, if you tell them to peek and bubble them, a lot of times they're going to do it and you're going to get quite a bit of charge just from doing that. If that doesn't work, if there's no line of communication between you and your teammates, which sometimes happens, you can often just analyze the battlefield and play in a certain way that is passive. You're passively building up charge, you're getting these juicy right clicks in and spamming from afar, and when an ally gets in a position where he would die, you use his mistake into your gain, and that could be a way that you generate that charge. And then after you have a high amount of charge, you want to make sure to only engage based on your bubbles. You don't want to be ending up in the enemy backline when you have no bubbles, because you're just going to get focused and die. But you could also plan certain types of engagements where an enemy is off, like on an off angle, or you're executing a small flank. You focus on someone like an Ana, you get them low, you have high charge, you bubble yourself halfway through, they have no counterplay, they can't nade you, they can't sleep you, you have a bubble protecting you, and by the time your bubble is over, they're already dead. And that is one way that you can really hard carry, especially at low ranks with Zarya. But moving on to the last tank, or the last character that I have to talk about in this entire video, and he's Wrecking Ball. And Wrecking Ball is a character that has a huge amount of solo carry potential. He's an amazing character for solo queue, because he's just completely self-sufficient. I mean, he's probably the most self-sufficient character in the entire game, if I'm being honest. He really doesn't need much of anything. Not much of heals, not much of playmaking. He doesn't need much of anything at all. I mean, he's just like the package, right? But that being said, a lot of Wrecking Balls want to roll up onto 3 people and kill them all. And that's just not going to work with Wrecking Ball. You need to be consistently disrupting the enemy team and consistently trying to put pressure on the enemy team. But you need to not cross that threshold of becoming someone who just gets farmed on Wrecking Ball. If a Wrecking Ball can go an entire game without dying, that is a Wrecking Ball that in my mind played extremely successful. And far too many Wrecking Balls jump the gun, end up feeding and being a liability for their team because they're just trying to force down impact and win a team fight when there is no opportunity to win said team fight. A lot of times you feel useless when you're just rolling through the enemy team, slamming the enemy team, getting a little bit of ult charge, disrupting the enemy a little bit and getting away. But not only does that bait out a lot of cooldowns that can create opportunity for your team, but when ultimates eventually fly and your teammates slowly build ultimates off your slams and distracting the enemy allows your teammates to push up space, then eventually you can find another opportunity to go all in. But you need to make sure that you are not a Wrecking Ball that is dying when you have all the mobility in the world, you have all the sustain in the world with your self shields, and if you can consistently pressure out the enemy, build ult charge while allowing your teammates to build ult charge as well, and you wait for that key opportunity, that key moment, whether it's you have MAINS or your allies have a nano blade or whatever the case may be, to help that sort of engage, help the play-making aspect of whatever ultimate combo or engage that your team is trying to do. That could be the way to close the door on a team fight, and you just got to make sure that you're not biting off more than you could chew. I know sometimes you feel a little bit useless on Wrecking Ball, but if you wait for that opportunity in a very similar way that I talked about on Tracer, and you're not fishing for too much to get yourself killed, you will see those opportunities that can really make a difference and carry an entire game. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high-quality, in-depth advanced guides over every single character in the entire game. If you really want to improve at any of the characters we listed, we have in-depth advanced VOD reviews over every single one, so definitely go check them out in the links down below. But thank you so much for coming by. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments down below. That's all I got for today. I'm Coach Mills. I love your faces. Send a few pics, and I'll see you tomorrow.